Divas. Today we have a special treat in store for you. We are giving you a timeline cleanse and a palate cleanse because that's right, we have Justin Timineri, Chef Justin, friend of the show. Chef Justin Timineri, the state's Culinary Ambassador, fresh from Florida. He is the state's top chef, and he works for the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. You all know him and love him. What we're doing is we're having a break, we're having a respite, and we are zagging because we have been all politics and all elections for many, many months. And now we are getting ready for the holidays, and we're going to talk food. Yes. And you'll hear me talk about some of my favorite recipes. 10 out of 10 would try. What's in season? How to cook a turkey, how not to cook a turkey, and so much more with Chef Justin, who gives us some of his favorite recipes and some cooking tips. So come on into the kitchen. You won't want to miss it.
I think the biggest problem you can encounter with your turkey is either undercooking it or overcooking it. Make sure you have two good thermometers. One is going to be an internal read thermometer for inserting down into the thickest part of the meat. And the other one, especially if you don't have a brand new oven, is to get a high temperature oven thermometer to make sure that your oven is firing off at the right temperature. So if you got time and temperature down, then chances are you're going to have a pretty delicious turkey.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
We are exhausted over the past few months. And so we are going to cleanse our timelines and our palates with today's special guest. Yes, he's been here before. We all love him. Chef Justin Timineri. I got that right?
Yeah, very
Chef
good.
Justin Timineri, the state's Culinary Ambassador representing fresh from Florida, the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Welcome back, Chef Justin.
Yay, thanks for having me. Always so excited to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you.
I love it.
Okay, so let's dig in. We're going to be talking about nothing political today, and for that I say so thank you for joining us. Let's start with seasonal eating, because I think we talked about that last time you were on the show. So what's seasonal right now in Florida? I will tell you, I meant to take a picture before I left the house. I planted some butterhead lettuces. Butterhead is my favorite kind of lettuce, and I have red ones and green ones, and they have probably quadrupled over the past week. They're doing really well. So what's in season besides my lettuces?
We're really kind of getting into the main part of the growing season for the state of Florida, as we turn into a little fall, winter times. The rest of the country is getting cold,
Right.
But not so much here. We're getting ready to crank it out. So there's lots of good stuff. Citrus is coming back in right now. I mean, strawberries be coming in. I've seen a few early strawberries already going out. Of course, we talked about some of those lovely greens. That is for sure. Whether they're those super hardy greens or they're those lighter greens. I've been loving some butter lettuce lately myself. In a delicious little delicacy, I'll make a nice little vinaigrette in the bottom of a bowl, and then put in that tender little butter lettuce and just barely kind of toss around. So much really, really good stuff coming in this part of the year. And frankly, stuff that works with those feelings and how we're going to be eating in the next couple months. A lot of those hearty things we're talking about. One of my favorites, of course, snap beans, sweet corn coming in as well. But also, look for those great Florida potatoes.
Tell me about Florida potatoes. My daughter, I think I told you, is into this whole permaculture thing, and they have a food forest at their house in St. Pete. and their mission is to get everyone to have a food forest so that you can be self-reliant and, healthy for the planet and healthy for your body and your mind. And so they grow potatoes down in St. Pete, and there is a special kind of Florida potato.
Yeah. I think there's some varieties that are, specific for growing in our climate here. And we grow a lot of potatoes commercially here in the state as well. I think a lot of our potatoes go to the chippers and they become those crispy delicacies that a lot of people enjoy. But you can also find our fresh market potatoes there at farmers markets, at the grocery store too. My favorites are the real little ones.
Those are my favorites too.
Great recipes for those on our website at Fresh from Florida as well.
What is your favorite way to cook? I like the little potatoes. I think I've said it before. I'm going to say it again, like garlic and olive oil, little salt and pepper. This is like, I grew up with a Mediterranean diet. That is the perfect, and some fresh rosemary from the raised beds. I don't think you can beat that.
Yep. Maybe just a pinch of some chili flake or something.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Simple on that stuff is the best way to go. Love it.
You can also slather it in cheese and make it completely unhealthy. Go the other way.
Yeah. Get out the sour cream while you're at it.
What are some of the most popular dishes from your videos? You have that wonderful kitchen, which I haven't got to visit yet. I want to come and I want to be one of your guests. You have all these fancy schmancy guests. You haven't invited me yet.
All right.
So
well, now here's your
I just invited myself
to come down to the Fresh from Florida Research and Development Kitchen. It is a cool spot, and we do some neat stuff. But lately, I've been really digging on some aquaculture stuff. For sure, the Florida oysters. I think there's a good push for that. And the industry has had tough times, and so now most of the oysters coming out in the state are farm raised, which I think is also incredible, and they are delicious. And and then of course they battle those things like the old wives' tale, where only eat those oysters in the month that end with R. And people say that to me all the time, but it's those were rules for when there wasn't refrigeration everywhere. So
really? Wait. You just glossed over that. I think we're making major news here, Chef, that you don't have to adhere to the don't eat oysters in a month that doesn't end in R. That's not true anymore?
Absolutely not. Nope.
Oh, my goodness.
And I wouldn't just say it. Look, I personally am an oyster lover, and
Me too.
My son is an oyster lover. So we live the life, right? So yeah, we eat oysters all year long, and we're all good. So really what it came down to was about refrigeration. Because you can imagine, once the oysters come out of the water, regardless of what the water temperature is, they are accustomed to, once they come out, if they don't go right into refrigeration quickly, then they start to die and go bad really fast. And that's where the problems come in for the most part. So, there you go. That's my spiel.
Okay, well, I thought it also had to do with the water that they were harvested out of, that when right.
But that could probably be said maybe for just about anything. But the fact is that the chances of someone getting a foodborne disease eating a raw oyster in a month that doesn't have an R in it is not a problem.
Okay, well, there you have it from the Culinary Ambassador of the state. He says, go ahead and eat them oysters. It doesn't matter if it's July. Well, that's really that. I learned that today. Thank you very much.
I love my Florida farm raised oysters in June, and I also love them in January.
Well, since we're talking about your Florida farm raised oysters, what's your favorite way to eat them?
Yeah, so like a lot of things, I certainly am a connoisseur, just the way nature intended, right? To slurp them right out of the shell. But I also do like to cook them as well. I travel all over the country. One of my favorite ways to eat fresh oysters is, kind of grilled on the half shell. And again, we talk about, butter and garlic and, and some fresh herbs and a little flame kiss going on there. And then a little crusty bread to dip it into. Happy as can be.
I like, for oysters on the grill, I like some Italian parsley, and I like a little bit of, I like I'm old school. I like them raw with the Tabasco, and I like Tabasco. What kind of hot sauce do you like?
Yeah. So, Tabasco is great. So I reach for like a daddle pepper hot sauce.
Guess
Some
who's
daddle
growing
peppers out
daddle
in Florida.
peppers? Guess who
Yeah.
has perennial daddle peppers in her
Who does?
garden?
Who? Uh-huh.
Oh, that would be me.
That's right.
Yeah, they're really
Yes.
good.
A-frame hot sauce or anything with the daddle pepper. But to me, it brings a truer Florida feel to the way I eat and enjoy oysters when I'm also pairing my Florida oysters with a wonderfully crafted Florida hot sauce. Just as like I would want to be drinking a Florida beer with that.
Okay.
Keep Louisiana beers. I'll keep my Florida beer, my Florida peppers, and my Florida oysters.
I didn't realize that the daddle pepper was a Florida pepper because I've been growing those for years and I really do like them. And I didn't know they were native. I've got them growing. They keep coming back year after year and they add a level of complexity, I think, that you don't get with a jalapeno or a habanero. So I am a huge fan of those, and shout out to the sauce bosses. I need to get some of those. Yeah. Do you have a favorite beer? We have a lot of craft breweries here in town.
Yeah. I've been soccer, and we've been going to we did a bunch of baseball last year, and then we were just at the women's basketball game last night. So we were having some ology beer, and then I think Lake Tribe is up there as well. So yeah, great stuff and great choices. And we're so lucky not only in this town but the state to have a lot of talented people.
Yeah, we had the Craft Brewers Guild president on the show last year, and the world is much better off. I haven't had a drink in almost 20 years, but I understand these beers are really, that we are making some good beer. So I missed out on that whole thing. It's kind of like
really cool stuff that we're working on more over here is some different, non-alcoholic concoctions and stuff, because I really love that kind of stuff. And I think I'm not a big drinker at all, but when I do make things for company or whatever, I do enjoy the same kind of cooking aspect goes into my making cocktails, right? I want to be mixing things and tasting, making myself, I'm not buying mixes. I'm squeezing fresh juices and using fresh nectars.
Yeah.
So
your creativity. You want to be creative. Yeah. You got a speakeasy. And this is, we're calling the new studio the speakeasy, but that's a whole nother story. So you're making cocktails, and what kind of cocktails are you, or mocktails?
Right. The same premise with both, utilizing these wonderful fruits that we have here and the juices and the different nectars, and then working on my balances with the acidity, whether it's limes or lemon and different things, to really make a delicious, whether it's just a spritzer or a more intricate kind of cocktail for company. I want to encourage everybody to kind of take that love of cooking and food and mixing and tasting and take that to some drinks as well, whether they're alcoholic beverages or they're really delicious non-alcoholic
So
stuff.
give us an example of what we might get at Chef Justin's Tiki Bar. And it's also, it's November. So when I say tiki bar, Florida style.
Yeah. So for sure, we have, I have some good Florida rum that's made right here in the States, stocked up in my cabinet. And then you would probably find me with some delicious tangerine juice with that as well. Some fresh lime juice going in there. And then some homemade simple syrup that I like to do with natural Florida sugar as well. So those kind of things. And then maybe a fruit garnish. And I don't like things too sweet, so I put a lot of acidity with the lime juice in there, sort of like Hemingway would do with his drinks, more acidic than sweet.
Then do you do like a lime garnish, or would you do like a pineapple garnish or something?
Yeah, maybe a splash of fresh pineapple, but then a lime garnish.
Okay. So you identify with Hemingway, huh?
Yeah.
What's your favorite Hemingway book?
Oh man, it's hard to say.
I'll fill in for you. Sun Also Rises. I really identified with the character named Lady Brett. For many years, that was my password on all my stuff. It's not anymore, so whatever. And moving along now, let's talk turkey.
Yeah.
Let's talk turkey. For people who are stressing over making their first turkey, well, before we start,
Yeah.
white meat or dark meat?
A little of both.
Okay. All right.
Really.
I'm learning as I get older, I'm starting to appreciate dark meat more. Before I was never a dark meat. I am broadening my horizons in my old age. So for people who are stressing over making their first turkey or any turkey, what's their biggest mistake and what's the thing people do wrong most of the time?
I think the biggest problem you can encounter with your turkey is either undercooking it or overcooking it. You know, I think it all goes really back to kind of techniques and fundamentals, especially when you're cooking a larger bird like that.
Take it out of the freezer. Wait, first you got to take it out of the freezer. That was my first big mistake, was waiting too long to defrost it.
And there are a lot of great charts out there, and we'll certainly be putting out some as well. But remember, it, in all likelihood, will take 4 to 5 days for a turkey to thaw in your refrigerator. Do not put that turkey out on the counter to thaw.
Yeah, I usually, when I haven't made Thanksgiving dinner in a while, but I've been buying fresh turkeys when I do. Okay, so what is the biggest mistake? Undercooking, overcooking?
I would just say, you know, even though some of these turkeys come up with these little pop-up thermometers in there, 2 things. Make sure you have 2 good thermometers, right? One is going to be an internal read thermometer for inserting down into the thickest part of the meat. And the other one, especially if you don't have a brand new oven, is to get a high temperature oven thermometer to make sure that your oven is firing off at the right temperature. So if you got time and temperature down, then chances are you're going to have a pretty delicious turkey. Now, all the other stuff on top of that, no pun intended, is gravy. Whether you're going to brine it or fry it or whatever you do, you know, start with the basics, time and temperature.
My stove is actually older than I am. The stove came with the house. It is the original General Electric stove. And I have to take a picture of you because it is mid-century modern. I mean, it looks like it's basically like a Cadillac with fins on it. It's that old. The thermostat, I'm not really very confident in how accurate it is. It just will not break, though. The burner coils are about 3/4 of an inch thick. I mean, if these go out, we'll never find them again anywhere. That's good advice. Inserting in the is in the between the leg and the thigh. Is that usually where you're supposed to put that? Okay.
Right down in there between the leg and the thigh. And you know, you can move it around a little bit and maybe even take a couple readings. Don't always trust necessarily the first place and the first reading, you know, as well. You can take a couple readings. After all, this is science.
Okay, and then what do? Do you put butter on it? Do you brine it? Do you slather it with what's your, and also a very important question, is it stuffing or dressing?
Yes. Well, so first, I don't usually brine too much just because I'm not a marinade kind of person necessarily. Like I do quicker, fresher cooking. So you'll never really find me marinating meats or brining necessarily. Now, turkey would be the main exception to this.
I brined one year. It was a pain in the ass, but it was really good.
Generally, I don't do that. A lot of times I get a smaller turkey because I'm cooking a lot of seafood on Thanksgiving. Certainly lots of butter. And again, those fresh herbs really make it sing. So that rosemary, that thyme, all that kind of stuff, and fresh herbs, fresh garlic, which are things you can use throughout most of the dishes you're going to be cooking during that time as well.
So I don't think I got an answer from you. Stuffing or dressing?
Stuffing or dressing? I would have to say dressing because I like mine more kind of in the vein of like corn pudding and more kind of soft.
Oh, moisture.
More crispy.
Oh, okay.
I saute a ton of you know, onions, carrots, celery, and then I'll do Florida sweet peppers as well, and then mix it in with the bread and the herbs and all that stuff. A lot of times I'll add in some country sausage as well, and so you know it goes from this kind of, you know, stuffing, oh, it's a great side, to this like, whoa, stuffing. But I definitely don't put any of it, my stuffing or my dressing, inside of the bird
Right.
anymore. And the same reason why I don't stuff different kinds of seafood inside of other seafood, because things cook differently, and so I just don't need to do that. And plus, depending on who's coming to my house or where I'm taking my food, I don't wouldn't want the stuffing with the turkey juice all in it, because
Right.
sometimes I make a vegetarian
Yeah.
stuffing, which I know that I can make that's just as tasty without utilizing any turkey juices.
What about oysters in the stuffing? I used to make oyster
Yeah,
stuffing every once in a while.
100%, absolutely.
And then
And
cornbread or white bread?
no, definitely wheat bread. Well, unless
Wheat bread. I mean,
there are
not
some
wheat bread,
nice
white bread.
loaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some like, Italian loaves that's gotten a little, I've been finding good Cuban loaves up here. I'm like, oh, don't tell anybody. I find them in the grocery store. They're only like $1.99 and they're so delicious.
Yeah.
Don't take that away from me.
No, I'm not taking that away from you at all. It's true. They are like the best bargain in the grocery
Yeah.
store. I mean, I was just joking with you while we were getting tuned up about how great it was back when we used to be able to eat potatoes and bread. I can't even remember the last time I splurge when I have bread. But I have diabetes, so everything I do is carb count. What's the best use for leftover turkey other than a sandwich? What's your A game for leftover turkey?
Yeah. So for me, in the way I think, pretty much anything you could do with chicken, I think you could do with turkey. So in my house, we roast a lot of small chickens, and we practice this very same thing where we roast the chicken, we'll have it fresh, and then the next day we already have some things we're going to do with it, because we'll have pulled the chicken. So we're going to make quesadillas, we're going to make some white chicken chili, or we're going to make chicken and dumplings. So I think all those same rules apply to your turkey. So the biggest thing I think is with storage at that point, you want to get most of the meat off the bones as you can for storage reasons, and then either have a plan with the bones to make some stock with
Right.
that, and then would be turning into soup, or making some greens, whatever it is, for sure. But I think again, let's get creative with it. Anything you can do with a chicken, I think a turkey would apply for those great creative leftover recipes. And it's not just that chicken sandwich or chicken salad or turkey sandwich or turkey salad, but you could do some really cool things. How about a turkey shepherd's pie as leftover? Sounds delicious to me.
Sounds gross to me, but I never have liked shepherd's pie ever.
Oh,
So, and I don't like pot pies, which is basically
right.
what a shepherd's pie is
Sure.
without the
Sure.
haggis or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just not a shepherd's pie gal, but that's good if it works for you. You do you.
Yeah.
What's a good dish that you mentioned traveling? What's a good dish that travels well that you can maybe make in advance that, fresh from Florida products, but you can travel with it and you don't have to worry about people dying when they eat it?
I like to bring lighter things when I'm invited over,
Hmm.
right? Because usually most of the heavy things are pretty covered, those heavy,
Yeah.
potato casseroles or green beans. So I start to look at lighter things like, okay, how about what can I do with salads or fruits or something that's kind of gonna lighten things up. I do like to make a slaw, because to me the food is usually pretty heavy. So I want to bring something
Hmm.
that's kind of cleansing and light, which is why kind of at my house, the turkey or the roasted chicken is really just a small part. I mean, we're non-traditional. It's mostly I'm doing roast fish. There's shrimp. There's usually either a little bit of stone crab or blue crab
Mm.
claws.
Ooh, what does a
We're
chap have
really
to do
doing
to get
some
an
seafood.
invitation to Chef
Yeah.
Justin's house?
Thanksgiving is usually a seafood celebration at my house.
That's like on my Italian side of the family, that was on Christmas Eve was the seafood extravaganza. Okay, so what kind of fish are you doing and how are you cooking it?
Yeah, usually I will get a nice good sized grouper fillet, because I could get a decent sized one to feed a good group of people, right?
Mhm.
And then I like to pair that with citrus and fresh herbs. I'll season it. and then roasted off in the oven, similar to how you would a turkey or a chicken like that, but at a higher temperature because it'll cook faster.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes out and it cools slightly, then I just like to pull off. I'm not trying to cut fillets. I'm flaking off chunks, with forks, and can serve that onto plates. So it's kind of like carving and serving the turkey.
Even with the fillet, you're saying? So you've got no bone in it.
Right. So it's a boneless fillet, and
Right.
it could have skin on one side, right? But
Yeah.
a boneless fillet. And so, I would season it up, maybe sear it in a big pan, flip it over, and throw that right in the oven and let it roast
Okay.
at like 400 degrees, and only take about 15, 20 minutes.
Sure.
Then, and I could throw some fresh citrus in there, squeeze some on there, and fresh herbs and some butter. And then like I said, when it comes out, I could just flake it apart with forks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That sounds really
it gives
yummy.
me that whole feeling of carving and serving a turkey, but there's this wonderful healthy fish fillet that I'm serving.
Are you doing turkey at all for Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Well, no, not turkey. I'll roast the chicken to give me the feeling of
There's
turkey.
nothing like a roasted chicken. I'm telling you, it is one of the
Because there's
easiest
nothing like a
things to
roasted
do.
turkey. I mean,
Yeah, it looks
every
smashing.
time.
It tastes great. It is one of my favorite things to do when people come over, and they're always amazed. People who aren't really comfortable in the kitchen or don't do a lot of cooking, quote unquote, from scratch, don't realize how simple it is and how
Right.
tasty it is. And it's, way better than any of the rotisserie chickens that you buy at one of the grocery stores.
100%. And then you have all this wonderful leftover delicious tender chicken that you can turn into another meal or lunch.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, that kind of knocks out two birds with one stone with me. So we do that all the time at the house for
That's
sure.
great. And we'll be right back with Chef Justin.
To tell us what you'd like to hear, what you've thought about the podcast so far, or even just to mention how awesome we are, we have a new email address and we'd love to hear from you.
That's right. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcasts@e.newsserviceflorida.com. I know it's a mouthful, but it's podcasts@e.newsserviceflorida.com. And we're back with Chef Justin Timineri, fresh from Florida, Culinary Ambassador. Everybody's talking about the price of groceries.
Yeah.
I hear about that a lot. Do you have
Sure.
any budget-friendly suggestions for the holidays?
Yes, I do. And there's a couple things. We'll never be able to predict the market. It's always going to fluctuate up and down. Okay, but we can control what we can control, right? And what we can control is doing a little bit of research ahead of time, finding out what's in season, what's in sale, talking to the people that we buy from, whether we're going to a farmer's market and we're buying directly from farmers, or like I said, we're researching before we go into the grocery store. And then from there, we're being really cautious. We're making a good plan. We're not overbuying too much food. So, we're doing calculations in our head lightly about how many people are coming to eat, and realistically, how much food is that per person, right? And these are just simple things that we kind of, calculations that we're doing just so we can get a good idea, because we want to rein in all that stuff, because bottom line, food is expensive right now. We don't want waste. We want to make sure we utilize our leftovers. We make sure we're buying just enough, but not too much. Because there's no need to buy more than what we need. So these are all things that we can kind of do to help. And this doesn't matter whether the price of food is high or low. These are habits that we need to be in as we shop, as we think about the food that we're preparing and the people that we're preparing our food for.
That is brilliant. I feel like personally, I overbuy, and I was buying too much and throwing too much away, and it really, or composting it. I don't like to do that. I feel very,
Yep.
it's not right. So I'm trying to be better about that. I do eat almost exclusively fresh vegetables. And so that requires going to the grocery store more frequently or ordering online, which I do once a week. So what, in terms of a recipe that would be a budget friendly recipe, even if it isn't for the holidays, what would be something that you could tell our listeners they could make and on the cheap and nobody would know it?
I think we talked about it, which would be, roasting that chicken. Because
Mm-hmm.
I can get a beautiful little chicken for not that expensive. And it's not just one meal. It ends up being two and a half meals by the time I'm done with it. So, when you factor those things in and look, we do complain about the cost of food right now. And yes, it's expensive, but it is 5 times as expensive when it's in the trash. So, the bottom line is make sure that we're using what we buy, having a plan. That's the best we could do to combat any of the food prices that may be out there.
Thank you for that. Roasted chicken, let's just get a little, I'm going to drag a recipe out of you if it's the last thing I do, Chef Justin. I'm like you. I go in the kitchen, I do this, I do that. I don't have a piece of paper written down, I don't bake, so I don't need to measure. For the roasted chicken, what I do, I smash some garlic cloves on the cutting board, put those inside. I cut up a lemon into quarters, put that inside. I put some rosemary and Italian parsley, kind of crush that and put that inside. And then I am old fashioned. Really, one of the few things I do use butter for is to put the butter on the outside. I guess you could do olive oil instead, which I would prefer. And I have done that before. And then salt and pepper all over and in the cavity. And oh, by the way, don't forget to take out that bag with all the which is another thing. As a young person, I forgot to do. I had no idea.
That's right.
What's your roasted chicken recipe?
Yeah, so really my favorite way, and we do this all the time. So I like to figure out things that'll save me time. I use this citrus herb butter. The recipe is on our website at freshfromflorida.com. You make this butter ahead of time. You can store it in the freezer, in the fridge. So at that point, once the butter is made, then I like to use my fingers and separate in between the skin and the meat on the chicken. And then I'll slice some of that butter and get it right there in between those layers of the chicken. And then simply season the outside with a little bit of olive oil and seasoning and right in the hot oven it goes. And man, delicious every time. And then I have that citrus herb butter that I store in my freezer or my fridge. It stays good for quite a while, especially if frozen. It works well with seafood. It works on chicken. It works on beef. So many good things. So an easy, great way to add some flavor on your food with a simple recipe.
This is really good. I'm looking on your website right now. It's got butter, a tablespoon of fresh herbs. And this is what's great about some of your recipes too, and the way you cook. I like it because it reflects because it's all about me. That's why. You don't have to have I need to go to the store and buy this. If you have it, you have it. If you have fresh parsley growing in your garden, you can use that. If you have rosemary, you can use that. You don't have to be so rigid in what the ingredients are. And you always have a little zing with the citrus. You do that. And the garlic. Let's just make sure that we don't buy garlic. We don't eat garlic. That is no, hell no. Not just no, but hell no. And then on your website, you suggest the all-purpose Florida seasoning, such as Everglades. I hadn't really thought of adding that to my mix, and that would also be good in the vinaigrette that you mentioned at the top of the show.
Yeah, because I think, a lot now, I'm not necessarily have a cabinet at home anymore with 30 different individual spices. Now I have maybe about 5 or 8 different individual spices, and then I have another 4 or 5 blends that I'm using. So I have an all-purpose blend like the Everglades. I also have a Florida spicy seafood blend that's like my Old Bay. Of course, I got the Cavender's Greek, and I'll have a blackened in there.
Wait, the what?
the Greek seasoning.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I
Yep,
missed
like
that.
something like a Cavender's Greek. So,
Right.
a Latin, a Greek on a nice quality Italian and seasoning blend. So, that's kind of how my spice cabinet looks at home, and some good quality salts and a fresh pepper
What
grinder.
is a good quality salt, my friend?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there are a couple different kinds, and just kind of like the olive oils, I have a couple different grades of salt in my pantry as well. And for my olive oil, I have a really nice one that only is raw drizzling, right? And then I have a not as nice one that I will cook with. But same thing for my salt. I certainly always have a little iodized salt in the kitchen because it gets used outside of the kitchen as well. But then personally, I love to flavor my food with a nice sea salt. But then I also have a couple specialty salts in my cabinet as well. Right now, I think there's a truffle salt in there, and I
Mm,
probably have a nice flaky pink Himalayan in there as well. I use those interchangeably. I just make sure that even if I'm somewhat familiar with them, that I taste them a little bit before that I use them to kind of give myself a refresh of how salty exactly they are. And I use a decent amount of salt because, in my cooking, I use unsalted butter because I like to control the salt myself.
right. I do the same. I'm a salt fiend. I have to confess that I love me some salt. I usually use the pink Himalayan. When I was in Hawaii, I bought a bunch of salt and brought it home
Ah,
because they make their own salt there from the lava, I don't know, infused or
yeah.
whatever. I probably still have some of that hanging around, but it's not, I wouldn't recommend eating it. As we're coming up on the holidays, do you have any fresh from Florida recipe suggestions? We didn't talk about sides for Thanksgiving. Any fresh from Florida recipe suggestions for our holiday goers?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I'm going to be making these holidays is a Florida bourbon milkshake. Is
Ooh,
I'm going to check that out. And these recipes are all on our website at freshfromflorida.com. Let's see. I got a new one up there that I really love that I'm going to be serving during the holidays for brunch. It's a Florida steak and grits recipe. So I
oh
hope
my.
everybody check
Steak
that
and
one
grits.
out. Yeah.
Wait. I think I
Yeah.
might have just fallen in love here.
Yeah.
Florida avocado and egg bake.
Uh-huh.
What
Yes.
is
Another
that?
nice flake
I want you to
brunch.
tell us how to make that.
So lots of fun recipes utilizing these awesome Florida avocados, and I see it all the time. I'm in grocery stores all the time, especially here in the state. And I see people over there at those Haas avocado bins looking at them.
I know.
And right next to them, there's the big, shiny, nice bin of Florida avocados. So I try to get people to say, hey, did you know we have these wonderful Florida avocados that are grown here and they're delicious. So we got some cool recipes, but this one is fun. Basically, you kind of half the avocado and take out the pit. And then we're going to crack a nice Florida egg because we got a lot of farmers that are doing Florida eggs in there. Again, we can kind of, the recipe is kind of a template to kind of get you excited. You could use a little bit of cheese. I would put some fresh herbs in there as
Mm-hmm.
well, and a little garlic in mine. And then we're going to put that in a preheated oven and let it bake. So you get this really neat texture from the avocado, and then of course the egg. And what a cool thing, two things that are so much alike that couldn't be more different, right? The avocado and
Uh-huh.
egg are
I love
are
that.
like in more ways than you and I could
I
talk
love
about.
that. And
Yeah.
you could also do a little cilantro and a little cumin on
Oh
that,
yeah.
and then make it a little Tex-Mex avocado and egg bake. A little
Some corn,
salsa, a little tomatilla
some corn
salsa. Yeah.
tortillas. Yep. Lots of good stuff like that. I mean, there's lots of stuff for appetizers and different cocktails. And of course, the salads that I like to make, strawberry and citrus salad, or strawberry and citrus are both coming in really good right now. So that strawberry citrus salad is one of my favorites. How about some vegetable drop biscuits at brunch, right? Where you're making drop biscuits, but we're adding in some of our own shredded vegetables to it and herbs as well.
Hmm.
That's a lot of fun. We got some strawberry French toast that I'll be making as well. So no shortage of goodies. We haven't even really talked about we talked a little bit about seafood.
Let's go out with a seafood special.
Yeah. One of my favorite ones I've been doing for appetizers are these Florida shrimp and mango with sweet chili sauce. So you have kind of these grilled, you can grill them outdoors, or you can do them on the grill pan, cast iron grill pan inside. They've got a nice piece of mango on there and then this wonderful sweet chili sauce. So you get a nice combination and something that's also very Florida. So when someone takes a bite into that, that's what they're going to be thinking is holiday in Florida, which sounds pretty delicious to me.
People need to know this. Do not overcook. The shrimp does not need to be. You do not need that. You know, when I cook shrimp on the stove to do like a shrimp boil, bring the water to a boil, throw the shrimp in, put the lid on, take it off the heat, and let it sit, depending on how big they are. I mean, really, you don't need to boil them to death when they're on the grill. That is my big complaint. They cook the shrimp to death.
Yep.
This looks good. It's on their website. Shrimp and mangoes. You got lime, I'm guessing. Fresh ginger. We got that growing in the yard too. And mint. Okay. Well, anything special that you'd like to share? You know, I don't talk about dessert because I can't eat it, but I have a very large and very prolific pecan tree. Last year, all my pecans were rotten. They fell off the tree rotten, and I thought my old tree was going to have to get the heave-ho. This year, I have a bounty of pecans. Yeah. Wow. And I have an old-fashioned nutcracker thing that it's not a nutcracker like what you see at Christmas time. It's a metal contraption. You pull I'm doing like, it looks like a squeeze thing that you pull. Anyway, so I've been having a lot of fun with that. So why don't you take us out? I told you take us out with the seafood special, but why don't you give some ear candy to the dessert eaters?
Yeah, for sure. So while we're on the subject of Florida pecans, one of my favorites, the Florida citrus and pecan bars are going to be a big hit. If you bust those out at any holiday gathering, I promise you, it's kind of like a pecan pie in a bar form. So they are delicious. They're fun to make. And of course, Florida pecans are delicious. So
absolutely. And so what are the ingredients that would be in the pecan bar? Would that be like oats or?
No, I don't think it has oats. Okay, so let's talk about our Florida honey and citrus pecan bars. So delicious and utilizing a bunch of things that are sweet and delicious in the States. So we're putting orange zest in there. We've also got natural Florida sugar. We're using honey, of course, our pecans, and a little bit of butter and some heavy cream. And we're almost kind of making like this shortbread crust for it to go under. So it is a fun and delicious recipe. I hope everybody checks it out.
Yeah, we'll have to find the link to that and maybe we can figure out how to put it in the show notes. All right. Chef Justin Timineri, Florida's Culinary Ambassador. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Anything on your Christmas list for chefs?
Let's see what would be fun for Christmas list. I think that this year, I think I need a new immersion blender in my kitchen so I can keep making some nice batches of cool sauces.
I love my immersion blender. It is one of my very favorite kitchen tools. I think we've talked about that before. Yeah. I absolutely love it. All right. Chef Justin, really pleasure to see you. 10 out of 10 would try.
Yay. We'll be back. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to talk to you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC.